point. More what I was really asking a question.
But it's third person. It's
not
not first person.
The point.
It says they part his garments among them.
I've watched a couple of your shows, and people will call and they'll be like, my mom said she saw a demon in her room, or my friend, and then a lot of times the first response is,
I would say I wasn't there. I don't have your experience, and I can't tell whether that really happened or not. But you said that this sort of thing goes on in courts, and I can guarantee you that if somebody came in as a witness in court and said, and then I saw a demon rise up out of the earth, it's really unlikely that the judge or jury would take that into account as a serious explanation for, let's say, a murder trial or embezzlement, where somebody said, suddenly this demon made all this money disappear from the company's account.
But the value of the experience for it to be judged by the fact finder, whether it's a jury or a judge, the value of the person saying it and then the listeners interpreting it is primary.
Right.
Okay.
Chris really sounds like he's got something to say.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. You talk about eyewitness testimony being so reliable, and it's the ultimate, piece of evidence in our court system, and that's just not true at all. If you look at the reliability of eyewitness testimony, it is terrible. If you put a room full of people and you show them something and then ask them what they saw, you'll get many different answers. And people have been convicted wrongly based on people who were sure this is who they saw, and they were wrong. And it's very, very easy to fool yourself, to think you saw something. If you don't remember clearly, your brain will just make up stuff to fill in the gaps. And we've demonstrated that thousands of times in different studies. So eyewitness testimony is actually really, really unreliable.
One of the leading researchers on that.
It's true what you're saying about, you put people in a room and then it's like, was the guy wearing a tie? And 3 of them say yes and 2 of them say no. But we still hold that as meaningful.
Well, we shouldn't.
Chris was just saying we don't.
I mean, we don't, and that would be a bad thing for everybody. So we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you have to weigh it.
I don't know. I'm an attorney, and I've taken a really unconventional route. I took my studies extremely seriously, looking at the purpose of the system and the procedure that we've established. People from all different backgrounds coming together and deciding, like, this is what we're going to do. This has meaning and this is useful. Despite the errors, this is the most fair way we can assess what's going on, and we still have witnesses. We still take in witness accounts, and we still say all relevant witnesses can be replaced.
Witnesses can lie, witnesses can be deceived, witnesses can misreport badly. I mean, you must know this if you've been in courts. Certainly if you're a defense attorney, you must have actually used these arguments that I'm using myself in defense of your client.
Well, the thing is that sometimes that they are telling the truth. And
sometimes,
it's
probability.
The thing that's primary is for the witness to say what they're thinking, for the fact finder to be like, well, I think your mom was lying.
Yeah, but it certainly depends at least as much on the nature of the testimony as the content of the testimony itself. I mean, if if today you were to have somebody walk into court and say, I saw this guy die and 3 days later rise from the dead, or I saw a ghost show up in my house, that would be one of the least likely things that you were going to accept in court as relevant to the case, I would think.
Well, it depends on what the case was about, whether it would be relevant.
Really?
I don't think so, actually.
Wow.
Actually, by Supreme Court ruling, spectral evidence is not allowed.
Yeah, by 16th century ruling.
We don't know what's trying to be proved. I mean, it would depend on what kind of case it was. I mean, you're talking about a drug case where someone killed someone else, and they're saying what they experienced, and that's why they killed that person. And it's like, was it intentional? Was it not intentional?
Are they lying?
Relevance depends on what's being proved. So, I mean, to my second question, as far as whether things, everything is either understandable or it's not.
I can answer that one because this is
well,
right in my field.
But you, please go ahead. Do we understand more than we did 2,000 years ago?
My PhD's primary subject is the history of science. So, and I studied ancient science. So I actually, a lot of what I've done, certainly in my dissertation, was compare what we knew scientifically about the world in the 1st and 2nd century AD with what we know about the world today. And it's mind-bogglingly, vastly more understanding today than we had. I mean, it's just bewildering how much more understanding we have today. So much so that what we've thoroughly established over since the scientific revolution in the 17th century, in just the last few hundred years, we've thoroughly established that the scientific method is so incredibly effective that it can take our understanding of the world and multiply it millions and millions of times, I mean, which it has done so since 1600. So we know, if there's anything we know, is that science works exceedingly well. And the only thing that actually interferes with our advance, that slows it down perhaps, is technological access to the data. A lot of the things, like the questions we can't answer today, we only can't answer because we just don't have the particular machine that can see the thing that we want to look at. Or in particular ways, for example, brain science. To really understand how the brain works, we would need a functional brain scanner that can scan the brain as it works down to the resolution of individual synaptic connections. We just haven't developed that technology yet, but within 50 or 60 years, we may have scanners that can do that. And that's just a technological obstacle.
So the thing that I'm wondering about, so like with that example you just gave, we know that it is understandable, but we're not there yet.
Sure.
What Richard is saying, though, is that there are always more. Excuse me. I'm going to put you on hold. I need to talk. What Richard is saying is that we never have all the answers, and it certainly isn't going to ever be the case that we're done looking for stuff, because as humans, we like collecting more and more knowledge over time. But to say that because we haven't obtained an infinite amount of knowledge, we therefore have zero knowledge, or exactly the same knowledge as we did 100 years ago, when we lived maybe half as long on average, when we didn't have immediate access to everything that was going on around the globe through like electronic communications, when we didn't have as thorough a knowledge of human reproduction, for example, or people still believed that the sun goes around the Earth, right? To say that we've accumulated all this knowledge and yet we know exactly the same amount as we did 2,000 years ago is just untrue.
But when it comes to God, knowing whether God exists,
well, that's actually a really good point. With all the knowledge that we've been able to gain over all this time, we've learned nothing new about God.
With the brain science example, we are aware that it's understandable, but we don't have the technology yet. But when it comes to the existence of God, we are no further along.
Yeah, to me that's an indication that there's no. Yeah, to me,
we've been looking with a fine-tooth comb and found nothing.
We've been trying as hard as we can, but to me that's an indication.
It may be that God exists, but it's not understandable. Like you can.
Well, or let me add to this: if it's not understandable, then Catholicism is false, right?
No,
because
that's the primary premise.
But if you can't understand God, then you can't actually have any true beliefs about God.
That doesn't make sense.
Well,
I mean,
if you have a true belief about God, you're claiming to understand something about God, and therefore God is not.
You don't have to understand something for it to exist.
For you to understand what it is that's true, yeah. If you're going to make any statement that has any meaning that's true about God, that means you understand something about God, and therefore God is understandable.
Well, then we go back to personal experience. Really, this question
we don't think is reliable.
Non sequitur there.
Hey, Jennifer, we're running out of time. Yeah, we're running out of time. But this is, I mean, it's a great conversation, and I'd welcome you to call back anytime.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.